is a good day when we can finally announce our partnership with Sac City Tees, as they have come on to sponsor and support the podcast in 2023. That's right. Sac City Tees is a Sacramento-based design company focusing on bringing quality designs at affordable prices. If you're looking to get screen prints or embroideries done, there is no better small business in the game. This family-owned and ran design company works with everyone from government agencies to your local youth soccer club. In fact, when I had my bachelor party, it was Sac City Tees who put together 8 of the best Groom's Crew t-shirts I could have ever asked for. And I have to say, my Buy Me a Beer, the End is Near shirt worked like a charm. Now, the thing is, with my past experience of buying custom-made shirts, I figured these were going to be really expensive. But they were on point with any large box printer. Now, it was a small order, and it was a rush order. So I was expecting higher prices. I thought maybe there'd be a lack of customer service, but I had nothing but an A1 experience. They did an amazing job. They got it to us quickly, and they got it to us affordably. I mean, what more can you really ask for? Now, if you have a business, a special occasion, an event, or just want some cool custom clothing, I want you to go and check out saccitytees.com or email them at saccitytees@gmail.com. Again, that's saccitytees.com or email them at saccitytees@gmail.com. You guys are going to love these shirts. Welcome to the Hard Money Show, where we talk about real estate, home loans, and media. It is a good day when we can get Maria Dominguez on the line to talk about some real estate. It is 2023. We made it to a new year. I'm really excited to talk about some of the things that I'm looking forward to in this year. But before we do that, I want to give Maria an opportunity to introduce herself, say hi. And I'm really excited because I put out kind of this thing last year. I wanted to get some new people on the podcast, and she answered. And so I'm very excited. How are you doing, Maria?
I'm good. It's a little bit rainy, so it's like, ugh.
Welcome to Sacramento. Well, it's so funny because I was telling my wife, she's from the UK, and so it rains there quite a bit, and it always feels like here in Sacramento we're in a drought. And so it's so funny just having that conversation with her, because I was like, oh, well, when we came back from the UK, I was like, well, it's raining, but we'll probably still be in a drought. But it's hard to really say now because they're saying that there's flood warnings and the freeways are having floods on them. So I'm thankful that we're in an area that hasn't had any power outages or anything like that. I don't know. How's that been for you guys?
It's been, on and off. I mean, I went out on New Year's and it was awful to drive. And then I came home and a majority of the area that I live in, it was out of power.
Oh, man.
So thankfully my place was good, but it was kind of scary coming home.
Yeah, totally. I was just at a couple friends had like a New Year's Day kind of like an event, so we went over there, and people were from all over Sacramento, and some people they just had their Wi-Fi go out for 30 minutes, and other people, we have a friend who they have a farm, and that farm is flooding. And so it's kind of this big kind of up and down all over this area, and I think this will be a really interesting thing to kind of think about as a realtor, kind of like in the first month of January, wanting to kind of move in and I think attack hard like everybody wants to do. But it kind of feels like, well, we just had these, 3 or 4 days, and we're supposed to have a couple more days coming forward. And then what's the aftermath going to be for that? I know for us, our fence was kind of falling down when we came back, so we had to do that. And my wife said that she saw a tree on a car, which I thought was only in commercials, but she really saw it in real life. So it's kind of scary out there. Hopefully people are being safe. But enough about Sacramento weather. I'm sure people across the country who have like actual real weather are like, yeah, that's enough, right? But
whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to talk about kind of. I think you were telling me you've been in real estate for about 5 years now. Is that right?
No, actually, I've been licensed since 2003, and it
Three.
wasn't
Oh,
until
10 years.
2011. Yes, I've been in
Okay.
the market for a long time.
Okay.
But 2010,
Hmm.
I had a major life change, and I got back into real estate and kind of hit the ground running.
Okay. Okay. So I'm 5 years off here. 5 years off.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's okay.
So what got you? Obviously, it's your personal life. I don't want to dive too deep, but you
No
decided to
worries.
make this transition into real estate, and I always think this is a really interesting thing to know why people want to do this because it's a tough career to be in if you want to
Correct.
make it a career. And it comes with a lot of really challenges where fluctuating income, you got to pay for your own health care, just all these
Yes.
things of being self employed. So, what kind of gravitated you towards wanting to be in real estate?
Well, and I don't mind sharing my story. I think it's important because it's
Hmm.
really why I got back into real estate.
Okay.
So in 2009, my mom passed away, and a few months later, excuse me, my husband left.
Mm,
So I was like, what am I going to do with my life? I mean, everything that had identified me as a person was gone.
mm,
And so I was like, okay, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I had this vision that I would go into ministry. But I also knew that working an 8 to 5 was not possible. And so I prayed a little bit more, and I ended up running into my girlfriend at a Walmart, and she was like, "Do you have your license?" And I was like, "I don't know."
mm,
I didn't because I hadn't used it. I mean, I had renewed it, but I
mm.
never used it beyond my renewal. And so I said, "You know what? Let me check." I literally had 3 months left on my license, and I renewed it, and I became her buyer's agent. And for me, real estate really is about an opportunity for me to be able to do what I'm called to do, and that is to do ministry.
Mhm.
So for me, I'm able to be a little bit more flexible on my schedule. I can go and leave the country for a week to 2 weeks at a time and know that my business is being taken care of and also that my bills are being paid. I mean, they call it in the Christian world, it's our tent making, right? It's
Mm.
how we earn an income to do what we're called to do.
That's awesome. So you were licensed, and when was this process that your friend kind of talked to you and she was asking how long had you been licensed?
Oh, I had been licensed 7 years. I
So
had been licensed a long time. Yeah.
in that
And
7 years prior, were you doing real estate or you just kept renewing?
no,
You're not at
I
all.
renewed it. Yeah, I think I did one transaction, and
Mm,
that was actually my personal purchase.
mm,
And that was in 2006. So when I finally decided to sell a house or buy
mm,
one, the market crashed. And I
yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
oh, no, this is not for me. Oh, no.
Hmm.
So I went back to work, working 9 to 5 as a recruiter. So I was still in some sort of sales position.
Sure.
Um, and again, the rug was pulled out from underneath me, and the only way I could go was up. And really, I believe that it was totally a divine intervention because I had not even thought about going back into real estate ever. Um, but it allows me some flexibility in my schedule, and it still provides a great income.
Yeah, so that's so interesting. So I actually have a buddy that we kind of got licensed together with, and he kind of was doing a similar thing where he kind of wanted to keep it going. And I always wondered how long, if you weren't active in real estate, how long are you going to continue to pay those fees? And I told him, look, like if you in Sacramento, if you can sell one house about every 4 years, then you're pretty much paying to just have a license, right? So you need to at
Correct.
least do that to not
Correct.
to kind of break even. But it's so interesting to hear that you kept it for for quite a while and
Mhm.
didn't do much with it. I don't know, maybe that's faith, maybe that was God saying that, like, hey, just keep it because you're gonna need it eventually. But good thing you did, right? So your friend comes to
Mhm.
you, and at that time, was she a broker, or who'd you go with?
No, she was not a broker. She was actually a realtor, and she had a small team, and she was looking for a buyer's agent.
Mm,
And mind you, during this time, we're talking 2010, 2011, lots of REO, so lots of bank owned properties. I didn't
mm-hmm,
even know, like, I was like, I hadn't seen a contract, and I couldn't even tell you how long.
mm-hmm,
So for me, I really had to start all over, but I didn't get a chance to sit and figure it out. I literally hit the ground running. I was carrying contracts with me. Homes at that time, it was scary to go into a house at that time because you never knew who you would meet, as well as what's the condition of the property. Because
Sure.
people were pulling things off walls and leaving lovely gifts on the walls.
Sure.
So it was just an interesting market to get back into. And a lot of times I felt like I was just running around with my head cut off. I didn't know what I was really doing. But then I was like, okay, I'm going to get into contract. And I learned a lot being a part of a team, which I thought was really important for me to transition back into real estate. It was really a great idea that I joined a team at the time.
Yeah, so that was such a weird time, right? Now, granted, I wasn't in real estate at that time. Matter of fact, I was still in college at that time. So it's a very interesting thing to have grown up at that time and been the age that I was, because it almost felt like that whole recession wasn't happening because you're a college student, so everything seems tough, right? I mean, everything kind of feels like you know, like you can't get through it a little bit, and like you're supposed to struggle during this time. But I remember distinctly going to in Natomas, going to a small get together, and I remember showing up at this house and being like, well, this is a really nice community, like what are we doing here? And so we go into this house, and it's like a 7-bedroom house, 2 stories, like super nice, and there's these college kids living there. And so we walk into the living room, and the first thing I remember is you walk into the entryway and there's a stairs, but on the ground it had been spray painted. And I was like, that's really odd. And so I walk in more, and they're in the living room, and there's like nothing in this house. There's just like some furniture, like typical college kids furniture. There's no sink. Like the sink is missing. And then we're walking around that, like they're like, oh yeah, come check out the house. And we're going, and it's like a vacant home. So they're like, oh yeah, it's like this house that's in foreclosure. So the owner just like said, hey, rent it out for like however much you guys can afford. I don't care. And it was the weirdest place I'd ever been. It was like such a nice house, but there was writing on the ground, some writing all around the walls. And I'm sure that's like hopefully not a lot of what you experienced, but I know during that time, from the conversations I've had with people, that people weren't taking the best care of those houses, and it was a little bit of a risk to jump into them.
Right. And also, too, I mean, people were angry, right? Because these loans at the time were just awful. I mean, if you were breathing, they gave you a loan. And so people were upset, which rightfully so, I get it. But yeah, there were holes in the walls. I mean, there was a lot of squatters, and also sellers who were renting to people knowing that they were foreclosing. So that was not the best of conditions either.
So yeah, that was a really odd time. So you were brought on specifically as a buyer agent, which I always thought was really interesting, because when I came into the space, there wasn't necessarily like a huge demand either way. But I always thought that it was odd that people like marketed themselves as I'm a listing agent or I'm a buying agent. And now that I've been in for a while and I help coach and things like that, I understand the difference between the two and the demand of the jobs and things like that, and how you might want to skew one way over the other. How was that for you? Did you do any listings at that time, or was it strictly like you're going to be doing buy? So how was that?
Yeah. It was tough because you literally could show a lot of houses, and buyers, they had the pick of the litter because there was so much inventory on the market. So, buyers had choices, a lot of choices. And then they were being very picky. They wanted to really negotiate a lot more. So it was harder, in my opinion, to get people in a house because they had so many options. So you really had to narrow down their search and kind of go back to why did they want to buy in the first place? And at that time, you really had to have your financing in order. At that time, underwriting was super strict because of the crash. And it was a challenging market to be in. I liked it because I learned so much and I met so many people. And that's really where I kind of started my business all over again. I should just really say I started it, period.
Sure.
Since I really had nothing to speak of. But I knew my contract. I love my clients. And eventually we started getting into some contracts and closing some deals.
Yeah, buying, I think, for a lot of people who don't understand with real estate, or for those of you who are listening, you're in real estate and you're like, yeah, it's a little more tough. I always thought buying was just, it's a huge time suck, right? And if you have to be the type of person, like my broker is the type of person who loves to be out in the field, who loves to be having conversations with people and just, shooting the shit and having a good time, and like, he's totally that guy. But
Right.
not everybody is that. And myself, I'm kind of like 50-50 about that. But I just thought, in the experience I had with it, I was like, man, this is a lot of driving. And I had one client in particular who I tried to keep most of my stuff in like one region, but they were very like, hey, we're open to moving anywhere. So I was up in the foothills. I was all the way into Merced. I was in the Central Valley. I was here in Sacramento. And I was like, man, this is real. This is a lot. And even like, it wasn't like it was one day to the other, but as we moved from sections to section, I was like, this is a lot. And you start to add on more clients, and
Hmm.
it's quite a demand. It's a lot of mileage on your car.
It
Um,
sure is.
it is. I talk to realtors about like, how do you feel in this industry, right? Like mentally, how are you feeling? Like, because a lot of times you can feel really alone. And especially like if you're not
Hmm.
driving clients around, you're driving by yourself most of the day. And,
Correct.
that feels really isolating for some people. And especially if like that's what you're mostly doing, right? You're mostly a buyer's agent. And if you're driving to these places, and it kind of will feel like you're stuck in the twilight zone where it's just like over and over and over, you're showing these homes. Did you kind of start to feel that fatigue?
Yes, but remember, I was also going through my own private
Mm-hmm.
struggle. So I was not only dealing with the death of my mother, but also the death of a marriage, a death of a lifestyle prior to, and I was struggling outside of real estate.
Mm-hmm.
So real estate just, I felt like it just added more of the struggle, right?
Sure.
I felt like I was so broken that I couldn't even put myself back together. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? I was like,
Yeah,
if
definitely.
one more person canceled on me, or if I have to drive like you all over
Yeah.
Sacramento, and I'm already broke, like
Mm.
I'm broke, just broke. And I'm like, okay, do I have to like put my pennies together? And back then there was no like Google Maps or anything. You literally was a Thomas guide.
Mm.
And so I would map everything out, and I'd be like, okay, we're ready to go. And then they would switch it up. They want to see a different house. And I was like, oh, okay. So in general, my first 2 years back in real estate, it was tough.
Mm-hmm.
It was I guess for some people, they're like, that's a great market because if you're in it and you've been in that one, you could deal with the
Sure.
markets that we've had since then. Um, for me, it was a tough market spiritually and mentally and physically. It was just all the leaves.
Mm-hmm.
It was just not a great place to be, but I stuck it out.
Yeah. Well, I want to touch on a couple things because you bring up a lot of
Okay.
really great stuff. The first one is the no like GPS essentially, right? Because it's funny, around 2007, I got lost. Like I was trying to go to the Bay Area and I got really lost. And so I literally got so lost that the sun came up. I left at night. The sun came up and I was like, nope. And I went to Walmart and I bought a TomTom, and I was like, this is never happening again. But there's, I think we talk about like the golden era of things, right? And so,
Right.
it depends where your perspective is on things like lending. You might say like the golden era was before the 2008s because you could make so much money, right?
Right.
Um, I mean, that's a whole nother thing to get into, but I think
Right.
now we're in maybe the easiest time to be a realtor because we do have, GPS on our phones, because we can easily just pull up the MLS on our phone. We can easily send and receive contracts on our phone or our iPad or whatever device that you're taking with you that you can instantly just have Wi-Fi on. And not to mention that, like, you have every advantage that realtors had in the past as far as it pertains to networking, but now you can create a personal brand on for yourself through social media, right? And that's a lot
Right.
part of what we talk about here is the media development. But it's so interesting when I have conversations with people who were back then. I'm like, I forget sometimes how tough it must have been to be able to do this job with how tough it already is to be like, oh yeah, if someone said I need to go there, I'd be like, I don't know where that's at. Like, can you give me directions?
Right. And then
Mm-hmm.
they would look at you because their expectation was that you're a realtor. You should
Mm-hmm.
know every street in every neighborhood. And I'm thinking, oh, I'm in trouble. Um, you mentioned Tom Tom. I remember I bought one and I could
Mm-hmm.
never get it to work.
Yeah, I
So
luckily I never had any issues with it, but man, like I had to stop. I was at like 3 a.m. and I had to stop at a gas station and buy a map and like ask them like, am I anywhere near the right place that I need to be? I'm like, I know I'm going to the Bay Area. I know that's only like an hour and a half away. I've been driving for hours here. Like it was really embarrassing. But I didn't get my license until I was 18. So I hadn't driven anywhere. All my friends drove at us places. So that was.
you're cracking me up because I remember back in the day going to a gas station because they used to literally have maps
Mhm.
on the window in gas stations, and I'd be like, okay, where is it?
Yeah, exactly. And I
So I
got,
mean, the agents today they don't know the struggle, like
mhm.
seriously the struggle.
Well, I didn't know that they have A and B exits, right?
Yes.
So whatever, and I didn't know that, and so I was like, well, A is here, B must be next or whatever, and that's not how it works. And so, but yeah, so much different time. So, one of the
Yeah.
other things that you kind of talked was on is like being in business for yourself is tough. I had a business for 5 years before I got into real estate, and there's a lot of struggles that come with just being in any sort of business environment. But then you take
Right.
personal stuff as well, like that, and I think it sometimes feels like, how do you balance that? Because it's like you were going through a lot at that time. And I can only imagine, you have a death, you have your spouse leaving, and that's heartbreaking. I'm sure you're really upset. And then you're restarting your career in real estate or really starting in. So it's like there's a lot of growing pains in that. And then on top of that, you're dealing with the market crash and the housing crash. And it's like you're dealing with all three of these. And I think that personal growth only comes out of things like this. But I have to imagine
Right.
at the time, it must almost felt like debilitating a bit.
It did. But like I said earlier, for me, it was definitely a faith walk. Like I believe that God opened the door for me to get back into real estate. And I also believe that He would not send me somewhere, open a door with the expectation that I'm going to fail.
Sure.
It may not necessarily be easy, but I knew that I was not going to fail. So I do a lot of um, mental preparation on a daily basis. And I still do that to this day.
Mm.
So whether it's meditating, studying the word, I do a lot of podcasts. I do a lot of reading because your mind will play tricks on you
Mm.
every single day. And I don't care how successful you are, your mind is going to be all over the place. So it's really important for me, especially back then and today, to continually do mind resets every day.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's interesting. I'm still relatively young. I'm 33 now, so I haven't had a ton of life experience, but I've experienced a lot in my life, and I feel like I've had unique experiences. But the conversation that we're having at our brokerage is health. That's the big thing, is
Mm,
health, health, health,
yes,
health. And so
yes, yes.
I think it's because my broker and I've had very similar experiences of like, working a lot, like don't take any days off, just grind everything out. Kind of the narrative that you do hear a lot on social media now, even though it is starting to skew a little bit to like more health and stuff like that, mental health, but it is still very much like the only way to win is to work 100 hours a week, right? And so we've done that for a long time. We've learned a lot, but also now we're like mental health, mental rest, physically, like, are you going to the gym? What foods are you putting in your body? How much sleep are you getting? And this is something that we're trying to bring to kind of the forefront of the brokerage. And for those who want to be involved with that sort of narrative, is how do you create an environment for yourself and maintain a community that will keep you, vitalized. I think that's really kind of the best way to do it, right? Because I think there's a big misconception with, especially since we just got off the holidays, right? I think probably most people haven't done much in the last week. I know some people have been working because I've been going and eating out and people are working there, but I think most people are taking that break. And there's a difference between resting and recharging, right? And I think sometimes people forget to do the recharging, right? And the way we kind of think about this is if you have a battery that's dying and you let's sit it down and rest it, that's fine. It just means it's not going to lose any more power. It's going to lose very little. But if you don't
Right.
recharge it, if you don't do things that revitalize your life, that bring you joy and happiness and things like that, you're going to be in a really tough position to get back grinding when we get back into this year. And unfortunately, or maybe fortunately for some people, but real estate's a grind. If you want to be really successful and create a career, I think this, you got to grind. So it sounds to me like you're doing all the right things to put yourself in a position to be effective for your clients. And ultimately, that's what this podcast is about, right? Real estate. I want to get people on here who we can have a conversation about what are you doing to be the best person you can be to give your clients the best service possible, right? And not a lot of people touch on that. So I appreciate you bringing that up. I love that you're doing that. So let's jump forward because, you got in, you were a buyer's agent, you were doing that. And I assume eventually you started doing listings.
I did. Well,
Okay.
what I actually did was I was a buyer's agent for about 2 or 3 years. I can't remember. And every kind of towards the end of the year, I always look at my business and I look at where do my sales come from?
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're a buyer's agent or you're on a team, you have to give up a piece of your commission.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started to look at the numbers and I was like, 70% of my business was coming from my own sphere of influence.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided, you know what? I'm going to go on my own and do business. And
Okay.
I did very well. I ebb and flow like most realtors. But I did well. I did really, really well. And then again, I luckily belonged to a larger brokerage, which allowed me to travel more.
Mm-hmm.
So sort of kind of midway in there, I started traveling at least 2 months out of the year doing ministry work. So I may not have been like this overachieving top producer, but again, it was real estate for me is truly for me to make a living so that I can do the things that I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I've been all over from Cuba, Mexico, Romania, Guatemala. I mean, you name it. I've been there and I've been able to do that because of real estate. So I'm very grateful and thankful for that.
I think that's an interesting way to approach real estate. And it's definitely not the way that I could ever approach it because I'm just way too competitive. I just couldn't do it. I was just talking to my wife about this and I was like, was it nice, like not doing anything? Like we were on the same holiday. We were gone for 3 weeks, but the way that we approach those holidays are vastly different. I had to probably every third day, I had to do something that was work related. And I got a lot of cool things done for this coming year, this year we're in. But I love that. I wish I could do that, right? And I'm trying. That's one of the kind of mindfulness things that I'm trying to get better at is be more in the moment, learn to relax, learn you don't always have to be working. But I think that's a really cool way because I did think, well, this is pretty nice that I can be out of the country for 3 weeks. Right. That's pretty nice. And so for you to kind of build that in, essentially say like, well, I'm only going to work 11 or 12 or 11 or 10 months out of the year. And I don't know if you're doing anything while you're gone, but for the most part, do that and find a way to fund them. That's pretty amazing. And I think if you could pitch that to somebody who wants to get in real estate and say, hey, work super hard for 10 months and then take 2 months off. It's doable. I've done it.
Yes. And what I've done is I break it up. So I would love to be able to be gone for 2 months, 3 months. I mean, ultimately, I'd like to kind of do 6 months on and 6 months off. And what really helped me was I had a coach and he was like, Maria, you're struggling. I was struggling in real estate. And it was because I love selling real estate and I love serving. And he was like, combine the two. And I was like, what? Like, how do you do that? Because all I saw at the time was work hard, make money, work hard. It was, but that's great for them.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not how I'm wired. I've
Mm-hmm.
always been wired as a giver. So for me, I struggled. And again, like I said, it was that mental space that I was in. And so we came up with the tagline is I'm a realtor on a mission. And I was like, I like
Yeah,
that.
that's a
And
that's a
then
great tagline. Yeah.
and then the next part is I'm a realtor on a mission serving neighborhoods to nations.
Mm.
And so when people ask me about that, they're like, well, what does that mean? I said, well, I'm a missionary, first off. And secondly, whenever I sell a house, whenever I have a transaction, that money goes back and funds a nonprofit in a neighborhood. It may fund a missionary in another country. That's my goal. Like that's my purpose in real estate. And so once I kind of figured that out, real estate became fun. I loved it. I knew the more money I made, then that means nonprofits and communities and missionaries got more money. So for me, it was a win-win. And it also served my heart very
Mm-hmm.
well. So that's, I mean, when I think about it, I get all emotional because I get excited about, I get to go sell a house. Yeah. And then I get to give some money to someone who needs it.
Yeah, no, that first off, that's beautiful, right? I mean, giving back to the community. I worked in nonprofit for about 10 years, in some way or form. I've done a lot of like, I'm in Rotary, I'm a Freemason, I've done Kiwanis, all sorts of stuff in the community. I like being involved, I like giving back. And I've had this since I got my license. I've had this conversation with friends and my broker about how I want to structure my business to give a portion back to nonprofits. We have to talk about this offline, because I've literally like this and maybe even an additional podcast about this sort of structuring for your business. But I want to do that. But I'm really kind of I'm a realtor. I also have my loan license, and I do org development for our brokerage, and I get so worried about the legality of like how do you how do you approach nonprofits or businesses or people and then say you're going to donate a certain amount of money and things like that and then not become some sort of financial liability, and things like that. And that's been like the big thing for me of not like super moving forward and being like, okay, do I have to sit down with somebody at the DRE to figure out like what's the correct way to write this down in my ads so I don't like get in trouble? Does that make sense?
It totally does. And I
Yeah.
mean, for me, when I was a 1099,
Mm-hmm.
right? So when I would receive the funds, the money would come out of my own personal account.
Mm-hmm.
I'd write a check to whomever. I tend to focus on homeless programs as well as women coming out of the life of sex trafficking. Those are like my sweet spots
Mm-hmm.
for helping our community. And now that I'm a corporation, that donation comes directly out of corporate dollars.
Mm.
And it is part of my value system to give back to the community. And it's how I run my business. People know that they can come to me with donations if they ever have a homeless person that needs help, a woman kind of coming out of sex trafficking, a senior, anything like that. They know who to come to. And I've kind of built my brand around the realtor on a mission.
Mm.
And people know, they're like, oh, you're that realtor that gives. Yes, I'm that realtor.
No, I love that so much. I mean, literally for years I've been like trying to figure out how I could do that. So definitely want to talk about that offline. I hate to say like such good branding because I'm a media guy. That's what I do, but it is really great, strong branding. In not like a skeezy way or anything like that, because clearly this is like a core value for you, right? It's in your heart. And I think that's the way to do it. And this is a conversation I have with our realtors that we bring on or other realtor partners I have when we talk about brand development, media development. I say, the best thing you can really do is build a brand around the authentic you, whatever that is. And just kind of go from there, and hopefully people resonate with that, and it helps to do that. But I want to talk a little bit about how you've traveled the world, right? Most Americans have a pretty small worldview. We've
Yes.
there's always been this kind of narrative like you need to learn English. I'm not going to learn another language. We know we don't really need to travel anywhere. We're the greatest country in the world. And I think there's a lot of arguments to be made for that, but a lot of arguments to be made against that. And I think traveling, they say, is the quickest way to expand your worldview. And especially if you're out there doing missionary work, how has that developed you as an individual? And how has that helped develop your business?
Okay, so as an individual, oh God, I'm going to start crying. Okay, it has kept me very humble
Mm,
because when you get a chance to see how other people live, and then you come home to your apartment, even if it's a one bedroom, whatever the case may be, if you have a beautiful house, that's awesome. But when you have people, families of 10 living in a shack, and they're still happy,
mm,
they're still, what's the word that I'm looking for? I don't want to say satisfied, but
mm,
they're in a good place.
mm,
And for me, when I come home, I am so grateful what I have, even when I had nothing. Like I said, when I went through that
mm,
transition, I had nothing. I really had nothing. And so for me to go to different countries and to see how other people live and to be grateful that they had what they had, who am I to sit here and complain about, oh, as someone said, first world problems, right? Oh, my phone doesn't work. My phone, I don't have enough battery. Oh,
mm,
whatever. That's first world problems. Go to a third world country and you get to see them recycling empty plastic milk gallon containers
mm,
so that they can get a loaf of bread and a can of beans to feed their family that night. And they've been out in the dumps scavenging for that. So I'm grateful and thankful. So for me, that personally, it keeps me grounded.
mm,
Professionally, one of the things that I love about traveling and about having a very humble heart and about someone who just really cares about people is that I tend to attract clients who require a little bit of extra love
mm,
because, a lot of times they may have credit challenges. Maybe their history is that no one in their family has ever owned a home. For me, as a single mom at the time, I bought my first house and I had a great realtor who walked me through the process. My mom was the first one to buy a house as a single mother,
mm,
walked through the process. So I feel like I attract people who need extra love.
mm,
I mean, they call me Mama Love. I'm called Pastor Perky, Pastor Love, because I just have that general love for people.
mm.
And I tend to, again, attract those that need a little extra love in the process. I mean, I've even had realtors give me their clients because they're like, oh my God, they require so much work. I'm not getting through to them.
Mm.
So they bring them to me and I just sit and I listen. And I just love on them where they are.
Yeah,
And
I
so I
mean,
think a lot of that comes from that.
I think to me, what it feels like is empathy, right? It feels like,
So much empathy.
when
Mhm.
you have tougher clients and, um, for, when the refinance boom was happening in the last 2 years and, rates were like these huge swings and then they were really down, they're starting to go up. We were seeing a lot of that, on our side, really kind of tough clientele. And, we deal with a lot of, self-employed clientele as well, which is kind of the hardest
Mhm.
to do on the lending
Yes.
side. And so, I grew up, in foster care and things like that. And so I have kind of this unique perspective. I feel like I have like a higher level of empathy for people because I understand how difficult it is to go to buy a home or buy anything for that matter.
Mhm.
Um, it sounds like you have that and that makes you really suited to help people who need help. But I do sometimes say like, man, it would be really nice to just like get an easy one, like some softball. Give me like one or two softballs a year, like I'll be okay. It'll feed me a
Right.
bit. But it is nice to be able to feel like you really helped people who really needed it, to get into homes because it is tough to get into a home in California. It's getting more and more expensive, and we see it on the lending side. They just last year they increased, or they do it most years, but the conforming loan limit, And I go, well, that's nice because it makes it easier for the top people to get into they don't have to go jumbo now and they can go
Right.
conventional loan. But then I'm thinking, well, now you're just like, you're raising it, but still it's like, it doesn't really help. We're still a shortage of housing. And even here
Yes.
in Sacramento, I'm not sure specifically what area you're servicing, but
Mhm.
that Anatolia corridor all the way into Folsom, and they're building all those
Yep.
houses out there. Those are like $600,000 to $700,000 houses. I mean, that's not in our. If you look at the median income, the median
Yep.
household income earning in Sacramento, I think, is like $68,000. Sixty-eight
Mhm.
thousand
And the
dollars is
average
not.
price is like
Yeah,
mid fives.
yeah, it's not
So
buying you that house in Sacramento. And so
correct.
it's really interesting kind of what's happening in Sacramento or really in through California. And it becomes more and more stressful to get buyers into houses when they're not earning that much. And this is, I think, a really important skill set to develop as a realtor. And as a consumer to understand that you need to find somebody who can also deal with this because it isn't easy. You need to have somebody who's educated and competent who can walk you
Right.
through this process and not make you feel stupid, not make you feel like you're poor and you can't afford like what you're buying because it can really easily turn into that.
Right. And
Hmm.
sometimes, unfortunately, realtors will take someone who's, let's say, pre-approved to 300,000,
Mm,
and of course, you want to go through what are they looking for. And I had a client tell me they just kept telling me to the hood.
mm,
So, yes, a lot of the homes may be in that price point, but let's look at other options. Maybe let's start in a different area, or maybe a smaller home, or maybe a condo, or
mm.
some other option. And if we're forcing them and showing them homes in the hood, that's not good.
Mm.
That's there was something I was going to say to that, but I will keep it to myself. But um, we can't do that.
Yeah, it's
That's
it's
not
really tough. So when we were looking to buy in Sacramento, we were looking from 300,000 to like 400,000. That was kind of where we wanted to be. And so that price range in Sacramento will take you kind of like all over. And this was when rates were still really low, so it was kind
right.
of a little bit easier to get into these properties. And I get what you're saying about kind of the lower ones because you're like we were ending up in South Sac, which I think everybody who lives out here knows that South Sac is kind of an underserved area. There's kind of a lot going on down there. That's not great. And but there was some really beautiful houses there. It was like somebody put a lot of
Exactly.
money into these, and so it was interesting because maybe the surrounding houses weren't as great, but there are some good properties there. But then even like we were looking in Oak Park, and Oak Park is a great up and coming area. I think that a lot of money's been thrown in over there. And we found a great, 2 bedroom, 1 bath property out there with like a huge lot where and it
Yeah.
had access on the back end where you could build essentially another duplex there. And so there, I think, you need to have someone, a realtor that's patient and competent and will
Right.
kind of, and we'll navigate that. But then again, money, you can only go so many places in Sacramento with that money,
Right.
right? And it's like
Right.
so that can be really tough. But you said something and it reminded me because I was stalking you on Instagram and on Facebook because I was like, all right, I gotta know who I'm talking to here. And I want to
Right.
say that you have a hashtag which is Condo Queen or the Queen of Condos. Is that right? Do you
Yes.
want to tell us about
Yes.
that?
Yes. So I bought my condo a year ago, and this is a great community. I love living here. And so, again, when it comes to branding, I was thinking, what's unique? Like, what have I not seen
Hmm.
in Sacramento? And I haven't seen any realtor focus strictly on condos. So I started in my own community, and I probably started not even 6 months ago. Probably less than that. Probably make like 4 months ago. And I'm telling you, I got my first listing. It is now in escrow.
Mm,
I have another one coming on the market that's in my complex. And I just started to really farm the area that I'm in. And my ultimate goal is to learn about each of the condominium communities in the Sacramento County region. I found the cheapest. I found the most expensive, which is along the river, 1.7 million. Who would have thought? A condo in Sacramento, 1.7. So that's going to be my focus for 2023, is to really build that brand of the Queen of Condos. I'm going to do some marketing around the Queen of Condos. That's coming soon. And I love it because I love the HOA communities. I feel like there is a definite, what's the word I'm looking for? A definite, not community. Oh my gosh, I just went blank.
That's right. Well, I kind of smirk because most people really don't like HOAs, right? I mean, you know, that I get the value of them. They keep property values high. That's the main purpose, right? But I know I worked at a clubhouse for a condo community. I was a supervisor there. And man, it was really interesting experience, and I've heard the nightmare stories. But I love that, like, from a purely marketing standpoint, I love that. And I would have to agree with you. I haven't seen anybody really kind of market condos or things like that. And I think the reason behind, and this is just kind of an educated guess, is that condos are harder to do than traditional single family. A lot of people don't know this, but there's unique rules that come to selling and buying condos. And so,
and financing, as you know, financing, not a lot of condos are FHA approved. So that takes out that whole segment of potential buyers.
Exactly.
For me, I just think it's a certain segment of our community that it's a lifestyle. Like for me, I'm an empty nester. So I didn't want to have to be out every weekend mowing the lawn, paying someone to mow the lawn. I didn't want that.
Right.
I wanted to be able to come home and deal with, what's within my walls. I didn't want to deal with anything outside. I want to deal with my roof. None of that. It's taken care of. So I can, again, travel more with that. So it's definitely a lifestyle change.
Sure. Well,
and a lot of people that live here are older as well. So
here's where I think you're going to be winning, right? If you double down on this, you stick to it, and we have another conversation in 5 years, I think you're going to be winning more, like significantly more. This is the reason why. There's two types of building that's traditionally happening in Sacramento, and I would argue through California: single family residential, which are typically 2,000 to 4,000 square feet properties, small backyards, 2 stories, $500,000 to $800,000 builds. And I think that's to accommodate Bay Area traffic that's coming over to Sacramento, because we're building a lot more here. The other builds that are happening are condos and townhomes, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to revitalize areas like the Arden Mall, the Sunrise Mall, downtown, where there's not enough people living there to sustain business. So the model is changing to where they're trying to build these properties with businesses. And if you're ahead of the game and they're putting all of these in, because they have those coming up to the 80, right? They have those new builds kind of like on the backside of the Arden Mall over there. They already started that in West Sacramento. They're doing it in El Dorado Hills. And so I just can see it being more and more, and especially for, like you're saying, people who want to get into their first property, but they're not ready to put all that money down to buy these large properties. I think you're going to be winning there. And if you know how to navigate that, I would say that they're like somebody who, as a realtor, most people can pick it up, but somebody who can effectively do it and know the in and outs of condo buying and selling, you'd probably be in like the 1%, right? There's just not a lot of people that do that. So I think that's great. And then there's a bunch of condos in one building, right? Versus all these other homes is much easier to show. So I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I think in my community, there's 462 units. That's a lot of units, and I'm tracking them. I know when they're on there, looking to move or whatever. So I'm on it.
Yeah, you can literally be cooking dinner and then step out and show, and then come back when your food's done. That's a great way to do business.
My first listing is literally like the next building over. And also too, just being involved in your community. For me, again, I'm very community driven. So I'm hosting a wine and cheese event here in February. I'm getting to know my neighbors through, pool parties.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally have one person who would text me and say, I was talking to so and so, and they're thinking about selling. So I'm getting leads just by doing what I naturally do, is going out and talk to people and just
Right.
loving on them. So, for me, I love it. I feel like it's my sweet spot, and it's where I'm going to stay for a little bit.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. So I want to talk, you're currently with EXP, is that right?
I am.
Okay, you're my first person to have on for EXP. I've been wanting to get somebody on from EXP because obviously if you're following the real estate world, they're the fastest growing real estate brokerage in the country, right? You hear the problem with them is you hear very mixed reviews from them, right? I think EXP is kind of a running joke in the real estate industry. There's a lot of memes out there about it.
Yes.
Personally, I haven't had a great experience with them because the realtors that I've dealt with, they've essentially have told me that the first 6 months they teach you how to recruit other realtors to come in. And so I don't know if that's the case. I mean, I try to take things at not at face value and be like, okay, well, this is what all of it, because obviously somebody's got to be selling houses. You can't keep a brokerage alive without that. So obviously that has to be happening. But I've been wanting to get somebody on who can kind of tell me about the experience they're having there, why they would recommend somebody to come over to EXP, if you feel comfortable talking to us about that.
Sure, no worries. So let me tell you my experience prior to joining EXP. I didn't like it.
Mm.
I mean, transparency here.
Mm.
I was getting phone calls from realtors. They didn't know me. All they wanted to do was recruit me.
Mm.
And so one day I was talking to one of them, and they were like, well, they were just going on. And I said, heck, you don't know me, but I would have hoped that you would have gone on to my social media and you would have seen that I'm not all about the money. It's about, like, you come to me and you're like, if you do this, we have this that you can impact the life of someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Come to me that way. Instead, I was getting these phone calls on a weekly basis from people. I was getting these automated text messages. I was getting VAs from another country calling me. And I was like, I don't want anything to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
What eventually convinced me to move over, I was very happy where I was. I loved my brokerage prior to EXP. Love, love, love them. But I also went through a life change a year and a half ago. And I was sitting there in New York in a winter storm. And I was like, something has got to change. I want to travel more. And what am I going to do? Because most realtors, unfortunately, we don't plan for retirement. We don't put money away. We just get a commission check and we spend it.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, what can I do? What's my other stream of income? And I was thinking stocks. I was thinking of all these other things. And what I was going to invest in was EXP stock because it was real estate, right? And my girlfriend, out of the blue, reached out to me. And she said, I'm not trying to recruit you, but I'm just going to tell you right now, I could send all 3 of my kids to college because of EXP. She got me right then and there. And I was like, what are you talking about? So we had a brief conversation, again, prayed on it. And I kid you not, I was like, can I get a sign? Can you help a sister out right here? I kid you not, I saw a message. EXP had just announced they were opening up Puerto Rico and Mexico the same day. I'm Puerto Rican. I do ministry in Puerto Rico. I do ministry in Mexico. That was my sign. I was like, I'm out. And I left right then and there. Now, do they talk about recruiting? I guess for me, I've never really had that conversation. I've never really received that. A majority of big teams, they do talk about bringing people on. The team that I'm on, it's about be you, but fast. So I'm on Team Fast. Based out of Oakland. We have 349 agents as of Monday.
Wow.
So we have a lot of agents on one team. We're the number one team in EXP. They don't push recruit. Now, of course, the team leader, I'm sure that's what he is doing. That's how he's getting his residual income.
Sure.
For me, it was all about residual income. And to know that when I sell a property, I get stock. When I not mentor, when I bring another person on and they sell, I get stock. So I have stocks currently,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm building up for my retirement so that I'm able to travel and serve. And that would eventually be my income one day.
Sure.
So for me, that's my focus. I'm also a mentor with EXP. And it's all about business. It's not about like how many people can you recruit. It's none of that. So I think that when people come to EXP, they can come to it for a number of reasons. If it's recruiting and building up your sales organization, that's your choice. For
Mm-hmm.
me, I want it to travel more because I mean, again, that's kind of like my mantra: travel, serve, travel, serve. And EXP has given me opportunities where I can earn stock, I can earn residual income, and still do what I want to do: sell homes.
Yeah, that's pretty. So again, I've never had that conversation with somebody, right?
Mhm.
So I that obviously makes it sound a lot more enticing, and obviously, right? I mean, we know, I think, as educated individuals, team to team to team, you're gonna have
Mhm.
different experiences, and especially, I think, if you're, let's say you just got your broker's license, you transferred over to EXP, well, it's in your best interest to recruit, right? But when you have a
Or just to bring
300,
your team with you.
mhm,
Like, can you imagine if you were a broker of a brick and mortar and you had agents? Again, that's a sales organization. A lot of brokers will go to EXP
mhm,
and they will bring their agents with them if they so choose,
mhm,
and they're able to earn a residual income with EXP
mhm,
versus if they were a brick and mortar, they sell a house, they may get a commission, but it ends there. There is no residual. It
sure,
it ends there. And also too, EXP has online training. Like you could train in every area of this business, whether it's commercial real estate, if you want to get certified in REO, certified in seniors, certified in land. I mean, there's a plethora of training and it's all online. People are like, well, I want to have a building to go to. I want to have an office to go to. And that's great. Some teams have offices. We do. We have an office here in Sacramento. But again, you have to
mhm.
outweigh what works best for you and your business and your family, you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I mean, it definitely sounds like you're in the place right now that makes the most sense for you. And
Mhm.
to me, I mean, that sounds a lot more advantageous than some of the other experiences that I've had. And I think in part that probably has to do with the fact that it's an established team, it's on a large team, and so they can allow their realtors to kind of focus on what they want to focus on and need to focus on and be successful, which is
Mhm.
great, right? And I actually,
Mhm.
now that I think about it, I have heard that the education there, the back end platforms are pretty strong, on par with Keller Williams and their other large brokerages, Realty One, things like that. So that's good to hear, right? Because me, I'm a big education person. That's like my biggest thing for myself. Personal growth is always trying to be educated on something new. So I definitely love to hear that. So let's bring it up to date. We're getting close to the podcast being done. I know you probably never thought we'd get through a whole hour, but we're almost done.
No.
But we're in 2023 now. You were the first podcast of the year. I know it sounds like you already did some planning for this year. I know we
Mhm.
probably didn't expect Sacramento to be flooded coming into the first week of the year, but what are a couple tips you might have for kind of people going into this year? Maybe some things that you have set goals you've set for yourself.
Well, I would originally say, I think the most important thing that I would advise anyone is number one, get your head straight, get it straight. And I say that with such love because I think that, again, we get caught up in sensationalism. We
Mm-hmm.
read a headline. Like we should not be reading a headline. I mean, our buyers and our sellers read headlines. We have to be educated enough to be able to explain to them the details of the market. So that's one. Number two, know your market.
Mm-hmm.
Just because what's going on in Elk Grove is this, it may not be the same of Arden Arcade. Oak Park, which, by the way, is one of the number one up and coming neighborhoods. It's in the top 10, and it's the
Mm-hmm.
number one community. But I wouldn't have known that had I not done some research on up and coming neighborhoods in Sacramento. Number three, social media, social media, social media. And that's the area that I'm working on. In this day and age, we can't stay behind a camera and not turn it on. We have to get out there. We have to. I mean, I know it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for me, but you know what? I'm like, I'm just going to do it. And it may not be perfect. And guess what? It's okay. It may not have all the captions and the bubble heads and all the fanciness. Put it out there. If you're scared, do it anyway. So one, mental space. Two, get educated about your market. And three, social media, social media, social media, drive. Because that's where a lot of business is going to come from. People will check you out first on social media before they make the first phone call. So it's important that we have a presence on Instagram or Facebook. And you know what? And go where your audience is. For me, my audience is on Facebook.
Mm.
I'm upping Instagram. So now I'm like, okay, I'll post and I'll share so that it covers them both. But we definitely need to up our social media content.
I love that. And what's a personal thing you have for yourself?
You mean like goal wise?
Yeah, goal wise. If you don't mind sharing a goal, I don't want to,
Oh, no, no,
you
no.
know.
Oh, no worries. No worries. I'm like, I always say I'm hot. I'm honest, open, and transparent. You know what I mean? I'll tell you it all if you ask. Pretty much for this year, my goal is to help and assist 22 families.
Okay.
So I'm super excited. I'm going into 2023 with 2 escrows, one on Christmas Eve and the other one on New Year's Eve. So my Eves were really working for me this year or this past year.
I love that. Well, we want to thank you for being on the podcast. I honestly, I think we probably could have gone another hour. You're a very interesting individual. Sounds like you're doing great things in the community. You're doing great things in real estate. And for me, that's really what we want. We want to highlight people who are doing this career ethically, who are doing it for the right reasons, and who are ultimately there for the clients. So love to hear that you're there, you're doing that. Thank you guys for being on today. Really appreciate it. Again, this is the Hard Money Show where we talk about real estate, home loans, and media. You guys have a great night.